Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the South Fork. From East Hampton to Riverhead, we worship and reside on the ancestral lands of the Montaukett, the Shinnecock, and the Korchag. And we take this time every week in our service to acknowledge the Native people who claimed this land as home before European colonization. We honor generations of their care and their stewardship with this land and all the other beings that share this land. And we honor our relationship with our Shinnecock neighbors today and their continued struggle for sovereignty and for justice. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you vote, wherever you are on your life's journey, whatever your name for the sacred, you are very welcome here. I am the Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson. Our musician this morning, I'm so delighted, is Alex Kuchta. Alex is a gardener and a musician from Queens. As part of an apprenticeship at Sylvester Manor, he'll be spending the next year learning work songs from various folk traditions to incorporate singing into field work on the farm. And our tech help this morning are Kent Martin and Tracy Robinson. As we continue our August theme of communion, this morning we look at the potential in our communion with the earth and with each other. How does our garden grow? And what can we learn from the wisdom of seeds? If you haven't found it already, you can follow along with our online order of service. The link, I think, will be in your chat. It's probably not going to be in your chat unless I put it there because I didn't give it to anyone else to put it there. But it's also in the Sunday morning reminder of service that you should have gotten. In these dog days of summer, we have no announcements this week. When we do have announcements, you can find them and information on how to connect to our events in your e-bulletin. And you can get announcements that you would like to have shared with the congregation to our administrator by Tuesday of the week that you want them announced. If you're visiting, we definitely invite you to direct message me or one of our tech hosts with your name and contact information. You can also just share it in the chat. And I or someone from our care team will be sure to reach out to you to share more information about this congregation and especially about how you can be involved. We begin by lighting our chalice, always the trickiest part for me, with these words from Alice Berry. Children of the earth and sky, we arc, nurtured, sustained, given warmth and light from above and below. Supported by Earth's strong, firm crust, we build our homes, till the fields, plant our gardens and orchards. When we turn from self and seek to be aware, we will find holy light in human faces, in blossom, in birdsong, and sky. Then Earth is truly our home, and we are one with all Earth's creatures, parents of Earth's children yet to be. This first song from Alex is Now is the Cool of Day, and we will be able to sing along. Thank you so much. So our first message is a story. It's a wisdom story that you may have heard before. about a cracked pot, the cracked pot. Each morning, a water carrier rose with the sun and walked down to sometimes a well, sometimes a river, with two clay pots across her shoulder to gather water for the day. The two pots looked exactly the same, except one had a small crack in it. Both pots the water carrier filled equally at the beginning of the day, the beginning of her trip. But by the time she reached home, one of the pots only ever was half full. And this went on for years. The water carrier walking down to the river, filling both pots to the brim. And by the time she ends her journey home, one pot, only half full. This cracked pot became more and more disheartened, ashamed by its perceived failure, sad and guilty that the water bearer worked so hard to fill the clay only to yield half a pot of water by the time she returned home. Finally, one morning, unable to bear the shame, or maybe finally able to speak of it, the pot, the cracked pot, spoke to the water bearer, describing her feelings of shame and disappointment, guilt of her failure, the crack that meant she only was able to bring forth half a pot of clay. The water bearer, though, was surprised that the clay pot had been harboring this all of this time, and sorry for the pot's distress. She listened carefully to the clay pot, describe her feelings, make her apologies. And finally, she asked the pot, this time, when we return home, I want you to look out and to notice the ground around you. Notice the ground on your side of the path and notice the ground on the other side of the path. What the clay pot noticed was that while the ground on the other side of the path was just dirt, serviceable and plain enough, the ground on its side of the path was resplendent with flowers. The water bearer knew all of the time of this crack in the pot. And knowing that, had planted seeds in order to be able to use the crack, this perceived imperfection, in order to create beauty and life. Finally, the cracked pot understood. What it had thought was a mistake, an imperfection, a failure, was really just opportunity for growth and creation and beauty. May your roots grow deep. May your branches spread far. May you find this world to be a wonderful place and leave it better for those who follow. This reading is from the memoir of Hope Jahren, She is a geobiologist and a geochemist who spent her life studying trees, flowers, seed, and soil. She writes, "A seed knows how to wait. Most seeds wait for several years before starting to grow. A cherry seed can wait for 100 years with no problem. What exactly each seed is waiting for is known only to that seed. Some unique trigger combination of temperature, moisture, light, and many other things is required to convince a seed to jump off the deep end and take its chance, to take its one and only chance to grow. A seed is alive while it waits. Every acorn on the ground is just as alive as the 300-year-old oak tree that towers over it. Neither the seed nor the old oak is growing. They are both just waiting. Their waiting differs, however, in that the seed is waiting to flourish, while the tree is only waiting to die. When you go into the forest, you probably tend to look up at the plants that have grown so much taller than you ever could. You probably don't look down, where just beneath your single footprint sits between 100 and 1,000 seeds, each one alive and waiting. When you're in the forest, for every tree that you see, there are no less than 3 million more trees waiting in the soil, fervently wishing to be. When the embryo within a seed starts to grow, it basically just stretches out of its doubled over waiting posture, elongating into official ownership of the form that it assumed years ago. The hard coat that surrounds a peach pit, a sesame or mustard seed, or a walnut shell mostly exists to prevent this expansion. In the laboratory, we simply scratch the hard coat and add a little water, and it's enough to make almost any seed grow. I must have cracked thousands of seeds over the years, and yet the next day's green never fails to amaze me. Something so hard can be so easy if you just have a little help in the right place, under the right conditions. You can finally stretch out into what you are supposed to be. Each beginning is the end of a waiting. We are each given exactly one chance to be. Each of us is both impossible and inevitable. Every replete tree was first a seed that waited. Let us hold this time in silence. This next song from Alex, which you can also sing along with, is Wild Mountain Time. Resume. There we are. So this is a prayer, a reading, first written by the Bishop Ken Untener of Saginaw, Michigan. It's often read in honor of Bishop Oscar Romero, who served in El Salvador. Bishop Romero, now saint, spoke out against the social injustice and the rising conflict and violence in his home. Romero was assassinated in front of his congregation while celebrating Mass in 1980. This is called Prophets of a Future Not Our Own. It helps now and then to step back and take a long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is even beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is a way of saying that the kingdom always lies beyond us. No statement says all that could be said. No prayer fully expresses our faith. No confession brings perfection. No pastoral visit brings wholeness. No program accomplishes all of the church's mission. No set of goals and objectives includes everything. This is what we are about. We plant the seeds that one day will grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything. And there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for God's grace to enter and to do the rest. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. We are workers, not master builders. We are, all of us, ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future not our own. It is a particular blessing, magic of how we do worship, to have Alex, who is a gardener and a folk singer, share this service. When I was a girl, one of the nursery rhymes that fascinated me was Mary, Mary, quite contrary. People say that it's about Mary, Queen of Scots, or maybe Mary Tudor, Bloody Mary, and that there's religious significance in both or either. Part of what fascinated me about this nursery rhyme was the quite contrary part. The idea that one might be quite contrary, but that is probably for a different sermon, maybe this fall. What I want to talk about today, and what also fascinated me about this nursery rhyme, was this question: how does your garden grow? Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells and pretty maids all in a row. I was a city girl. I still think of myself as a city girl. And I did not have a lot of experience with gardens. My grandma grew tomatoes in her backyard a couple years. But planting for food or for flowers was not a thing that we did. And that's a shame because there is a lot that we can learn from gardening, from planting seeds and waiting and watching them grow, about the earth and its cycles and its secrets. This past year, or maybe past year and a half, as we have moved with pandemic shifts, there's been a rise in home and community gardening around the world. We see that here at home in our own congregation, where we have begun our own community garden. Early on, some of this move for gardening was about disrupted food supply chains, people going to their grocery stores and not being able to find what it was that they needed or wanted or expected to have. Some of it was this kind of post-apocalyptic worry about the future. That there would be a day when there were no grocery stores and we would need to plant our own food, grow our own food, and raise our own animals for survival. This is along those stories about us hunkering down in bunkers and compounds where we close off and care for our own survival or the survival of a small group. But what I see in what we learn and gain from gardening is less about the hunkering down into our own small closed groups and more about what gardening can do for our bodily health, our mental health, and especially for our community health. We have witnessed the way that growing food, fresh and healthy and local, has been able to alleviate food insecurity, not cure it. I don't think we imagine that small community gardens are going to solve the problem of world hunger or even local hunger. But it is a part of us doing the thing that we can do, and maybe even doing it well, so that we do our part to start to shift what food insecurity looks like in our community. I think it's also a little bit about relearning and passing down some ancient and maybe not so ancient wisdom of the earth, skills for working with the earth. And as we have been forced to, encouraged to stay at home for our own safety and the safety of our communities, having these gardens is an opportunity to be outside in the dirt and the sunlight and the fresh air, to feed our bodies in ways that they don't get fed inside our homes. But what I'm most proud of, I think, what I'm most excited about is what these teach us about our communities, about opportunities to rely not just on ourselves, but to work with others to grow and to share with others what we do grow. That interdependence that we talk so much about. But what is the wisdom that we are relearning from the earth and its cycles? I think one of them is about patience. Hope Jahren, the geochemist, the geobiologist, reminds us of the capacity for seeds to wait, that they are under the ground or atop the ground, waiting for possibly, apparently, hundreds of years. And that while they are waiting in their stillness, much like we are waiting in our stillness for this to be over, that while they are waiting, they are alive. And that underneath the hard shell, they just need water, light, and a little nourishment to stretch out and to expand. She says they also, most of all, need a little help. She reminds us that while some of the waiting is waiting to grow, some of the waiting is waiting to die, and that's okay too. The oak, she says, is waiting to die, but it's not doing nothing. It's breathing. It's taking in carbon dioxide. It's releasing oxygen. It's participating in the cycle of life and providing, creating what's necessary for others, mostly us, to be able to live while we are waiting. One of my favorite quotes about seeds is, it's on the top of your order of service if you toggled over to it. They tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. It's from a Greek poet. It's not that old, but you've probably heard it, if you've heard it most recently, in terms of protest. It's a pretty common, pretty well-known slogan in protest circles. Some people call it a Mexican proverb. But it speaks to the resilience, I think, in the life of a seed. That buried beneath the ground in the dark, there is something happening. There is life waiting to flourish. That in our suffering, that even in our struggles, if we allow it, there is a future that bears fruit. They tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. It's partly why I like the story of the cracked pot. This idea that there is beauty and usefulness and possibility out of imperfection, out of what we may think of as failure. This idea that we don't always know our purpose. We don't always know. I think we rarely really know how our lives and our work, our presence, how our actions, large and small, touch others. Fundamentally, I think that planting seeds is an act of faith and a gift to the future. We plant seeds hoping that something will grow. I don't have outdoor space to plant, but I do pots in my apartment. And I'll tell you, I've planted 3 or 4 different pots. I had one that started out already grown. Nothing has actually grown. But I will be planting something later this week because I plant seeds hoping that something will grow. And that even if it doesn't, that something is still happening. That seed is nourishing the soil that it's in. Maybe food for a future seed. That there is something happening, even if I don't witness it, even if I don't actually get to experience what it finally is. There's this story of the old man planting a fig tree. He's very old, and he's outside planting a fig tree, and an emperor or a neighbor comes by and they ask him, why are you planting this tree, old man? The time to plant was in your youth. And he tells them, I am planting this fig tree. Maybe I will live long enough to see the fruit. But if I don't, it will be here for my children and their children, that they will eat from this fig tree that I plant, just as I ate from trees that I did not plant. We are prophets of a future not our own. We plant seeds that one day will grow. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces far beyond our capabilities. We water seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. That is what we are about. May it be so this day and every day. We support the work of this congregation in many ways. The work of our hands, and also, even while we are still meeting online, through the gifts of our pockets. Your financial contributions help to support the ongoing work of this congregation and the ways that we are able to show up in our community. You can contribute right now using PayPal with the link in your chat that you should be able to click, or the link on your screen that you might be able to type into your browser. And as always, you can just, do it the old-fashioned way and send a check. If you're visiting, we invite you, and even if you're not visiting, we invite you to remain in the room and join us for informal conversation after this worship is over. If you are visiting, though, please do put your contact information in the chat, or you can reach out directly to myself or to John Andrews, and someone from our care and connection team will be in touch. If you are visiting for the first time, or the 50th time, or the 500th time, if you find yourself in agreement with our values and our mission, our principles, we hope that you will find a home here. These closing words are from Eric Williams. Like seeds, we emerge from, dwell within, are transformed by, and called back to love. May your mind be humbled before this mystery. May your heart grow hopeful from it. May you be sustained by this love always. We extinguish our flame with the words on your screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.